Just over a month ago, Xiaomi released the Redmi K50 Gaming Edition, which was a tad strange since the regular K50 series lineup had yet to be announced. That being said, the rest of the series has finally arrived, and I have with me here today the brand new Redmi K50 Pro. The K50 Pro is one of the first smartphones in the world to feature the 4nm run MediaTek Dimensity 9000 chipset, which is the main reason why the K50 Pro released later than its sibling, the K50 Gaming Edition, since that device is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 CPU. We'll have to see how the new Dimensity 9000 chip performs, but the smartphone itself comes in at the exact same price as its predecessor, the K40 Pro. It's cheaper than the K50 Gaming Edition and a hell of a lot more affordable than the flagship Xiaomi 12 Pro. The new Redmi King may be very well priced, but does that mean corners have been cut? Let's find out in my unboxing and review of the Redmi K50 Pro. The Redmi K50 Pro comes in 4 different color variants. You can pick it up in Fantasy Blue, which has a glossy back, Dim Light Green, which has a matte back, as well as Silver Track, which also has a matte back, or the version that I have with me today, which is also a glossy glass back, known as Ink Feather Black. I guess it's pretty obvious why it's called Ink Feather Black. That is because of the nano microcrystalline back, and inside that we have sparkling ice crystals. It's very subtle but looks super unique. Inside the device we have a 5000 mAh battery and crazy fast 120 watt charging, as well as the brand new MediaTek Dimensity 9000 chipset. We have a 7-layer vapor chamber liquid cooling system, LPDDR5X RAM, UFS 3.1 storage, and Bluetooth 5.3. The display is protected by Gorilla Glass Victus. We have a Gorilla Glass back, but unfortunately wrapping around is a plastic frame, whereas the K50 Gaming Edition has an aluminum frame. The K50 Gaming Edition doesn't have an IP certification, but the K50 Pro over here does, that being an IP53 dust and splash resistance certification. The main camera here is quite a bit better than the K50 Gaming and better than last year's K40 Pro lineup, that being a 108 megapixel ISOCELL HM2 sensor, but the ultra wide and macro are unchanged at 8 megapixels and 2 megapixels respectively. The ultra wide shot looks okay. It is only 8 megapixels. 108 megapixel main looks decent, packed with detail. Binning it down 9:1, binning to 12 looks even better. You can do 2 times digital zoom over here with the 108 megapixel shot, as well as binning down 9:1, which looks better thanks to AI. 5 times digital zoom over here can go up to a max of 10 times digital zoom. Still kind of looks okay, I guess you could say. And of course we can get up close and personal to a subject thanks to that 2 megapixel macro sensor, which does an average job. And yes, we can shoot portrait pics as well. We do have 1080p 60 FPS main video recording over here. I've seen better, but it looks alright. It's nice and smooth thanks to OIS. We also have 4K 30 FPS, but get this, there is no 60 FPS option when recording video at 4K, and there's no 8K video at all, which is a bit of a bummer. And while we can record at ultra wide, we're capped to 1080p and 30 FPS, no 60 FPS option over here, and no 4K either. Recording ultra wide at night looks as bad as most Xiaomi devices do when using this 8 megapixel ultra wide cam, and recording 4K 30 FPS at night doesn't look too bad. Still a bit of a glary effect over there, a little bit of pixelization. It looks okay though, it's nice and bright. And of course 1080p 60 at night is a lot darker, but it looks a lot more natural and the colors are more realistic. But we do have a night mode option, though the night mode pretty much just drops the frame rate, which inevitably just raises up the brightness. But once again, details are dumbed down. Ultra wide at night looks okay with night off. Night on looks okay as well. Going to the main sensor, taking night mode off looks okay. Night mode on does look a hell of a lot better than night mode off. And digitally zooming in by 2 times looks average. Night mode on does make it look a bit better, but once again dumbs down the details. Same thing can be said with 5 times digital zoom with night mode off and night mode on. And of course max zoom is 10 times regardless of whether you're using night mode off or night mode on. The back cameras are okay, I guess you could say. At this price bracket, they're more than decent. On the right side of the device, we do have a power button mixed up with a physical fingerprint sensor. Above that, we have the volume rocker. At the bottom of the device, we have a dual SIM 5G tray over here. No expandable storage, unfortunately, though we do have that water resistant seal. We have a USB 2.0 Type-C port, and alongside that is the first dual stereo speaker over here, which is paired up with Dolby Atmos. Second one at the top, and we also have an IR blaster. At the top of the display, in a punch hole, sits a 20 megapixel IMX596 sensor, which is the same one that we saw in the K50 K50 Gaming Edition. The selfie photos look alright. There's a bit of detail over there, but it blows out the shot quite a bit. Portrait looks pretty decent too, with pretty much perfect edge detection. The Redmi K50 Pro is unfortunately capped at 1080p and 30 FPS when using the selfie cam to record video. Nevertheless, let me know what you guys think of the video and audio quality when recording with the selfie cam on the brand new K50 Pro. The gaming edition of the K50 lineup can record 1080p 60 FPS selfie video, where this is capped to 30 FPS, which is once again a bit of a bummer. And taking selfies at night, you can switch on the night mode on option, and it really does not look the best. And there is no night mode option for the portrait mode, and using the flash once again is very, very average. The selfie camera is a bit of a mixed bag once again, like I mentioned with the K50 Gaming Edition, though at least that had better recording. And of course we have that always on display, which can be kept always on, as well as the side mounted physical fingerprint sensor. Even though it's an AMOLED display, there is no fingerprint underneath the screen, and we can customize our display with a new wallpaper set called Crystallization, and it pretty much matches the micro crystals found at the back of the ink feather version that I have over here. Pretty nifty if you ask me. We also have 2D face unlock that uses the selfie camera, and the display itself is a 6.67 inch OLED flat dot display. It has Dolby Vision, HDR10 plus DCI-P3 color gamut rating, and 1200 nits of max brightness, which is 100 less than the K50 Gaming Edition. The phone, however, does bump things up when compared to the Gaming Edition. It now has a WQHD plus display with 526 ppi, and it has a fixed 120 Hz refresh rate. No LTPO tech over here, so it can't refresh as low as 1 or 10 Hz. It's sticking to 120 Hz most of the time, and we do have 480 Hz touch sampling rate. No pulse width modulation rating here either. We do have MIUI 13 skinned over Android 12, which is less about features and more about optimizations. Like I've said in many recent Xiaomi review videos that I've done, it's pretty much the same old Xiaomi software, and yes, there are Google services, and of course the Play Store works as well on the Redmi K50 Pro. We do have 12 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM, and you can add an extra 3 gigs to that with RAM extension. And yes, we have the new 4nm run MediaTek Dimensity 9000 octa-core CPU. It has one ultra core sitting at 3.05 GHz, 3 super cores at 2.85 GHz, and 4 efficiency cores at 1.8 GHz. And when combining that new chipset with the new included performance mode over here, yields an AnTuTu score of 1,020,314 points. And when it comes to Geekbench, it got a much higher single core and multi-core score when compared to Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 powered smartphones, with a single core score of 1307 and a multi-core score of 4612. But when running 3D Mark Wildlife, it got a pretty terrible score of 8,394 with an average FPS of 50.3, and I did test it over 20 times because it just didn't seem right. But at least it's still quite a bit better than last year's flagships. But of course we can use this chipset for more than just running benchmarks. We can actually play games on it, and enabling the FPS counter in developer options and hopping into our first game, which is Genshin Impact. We do have a game space over here where we can enable performance mode, which we're going to be doing on the next 2 games we'll be playing. Running highest possible graphics over here with the max available frames per second, since there is a cap being 60 FPS. And the Redmi K50 Pro managed to get somewhere between 30 and 58 frames per second min and high, with an average of around 55, which is pretty similar to the min and max Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 powered smartphone on my channel, which sits between 34 and 58 FPS. I thought it would do a tad better than that, at least a bit more stable, but nevertheless it's on par with the latest that Qualcomm has to offer. And running Bullet Force over here with ultra graphics and max FPS, this game does not have a frames per second cap. It is unlimited, and we managed to get between 111 and 122, which is slightly less stable than the average Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 powered smartphone on my channel, which averages between 113 and 122 FPS. And while the K50 Gaming Edition had quad stereo speakers, this only has dual stereo speakers. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and give them a listen while playing a game. And now it's time to give those speakers a listen while playing some music. The Redmi K50 Pro is a serious powerhouse thanks to its new Dimensity 9000 chipset, super fast LPDDR5X RAM, Gorilla Glass Victus protected WQHD plus OLED display, Dolby Atmos enhanced dual stereo speakers, and a huge 7-layer vapor chamber cooling system. It has a new design which is quite subtle but is sure to turn some heads thanks to its new nano microcrystalline backplate that sparkles with ice crystals. And while its newly formed camera module houses a superb 108 megapixel ISOCELL HM2 main sensor, it still has a subpar ultra-wide and macro camera, not to mention 4K video is capped at 30 FPS. The 5000 mAh battery capacity is larger than the gaming edition's 4700 mAh cell. It has the same 120 watt wide charging as the gaming edition, and while the K50 gaming edition may cost a tad more, it's better than the K50 Pro in many ways. It has aluminum frames, a brighter display, 1920Hz pulse width modulation, 4K 60fps back recording, 1080p 60fps selfie recording, a quad speaker system, a larger cooling system, and even has physical pop-up gaming triggers. But at the same time, the K50 Pro has the gaming edition beat with Bluetooth 5.3, an IP53 certification, a better main camera, and a higher resolution WQHD plus display, making the Redmi K50 Pro easy to recommend over the K50 gaming edition for those who aren't necessarily gamers, don't have the money to splurge on the Xiaomi 12 Pro, and most importantly, for those who are eager to test out MediaTek's latest Dimensity 9000 chipsets run on 4nm process node technology. This is TechNick, and I'll catch you in the next one.